Lights, camera,
Rolling.
action.
I feel the need for speed. Ow!
Wax on, right hand. Wax off, left hand. Wax on, wax off.
He taught me, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses.
Hi, I'm Joe, and this is the Filmjoe podcast, where film talk happens. Hi, I'm Joe, and welcome to a special bonus episode of the Filmjoe podcast. Today we have director Guilford Adams here to talk about his new documentary, American Clown.
I think of the absurdity of being a clown as a job, and sometimes you look at yourself in the mirror, you're like, what am I doing?
Clowning as an art form is a state of mind. It's telling the audience, I'm living through everything you're living through, but I'm failing at it, and hopefully that's funny.
Well, that's what I want to do. I just want to be an idiot in front of people.
My wife says, like, could you live like this? I was like, yeah, I could. The kids can learn some tricks.
I'm not going to try to be the wittiest person in the room. I can fall on my face and it will work every time.
I've gotten messages from some professional clowns like, how dare you do this to the craft?
I'm looking for just a nose. We don't have a nose, we have a mask, or you can have a...
Now clowns in the mainstream are the horror movies.
Clowning as we know it is gone.
Glad to be here, Joe. Thanks, man.
Yeah, and thanks for coming on. So yeah, this is a very interesting documentary. When I came across it and I'd read up on it, there's not really a lot of pro clown documentaries out there, is there?
I don't know if there's not a lot of documentaries about clowns out there, really.
Right. So tell our audience and our listeners about your documentary, what it's all about, and what inspired you to do this.
You know, I've been working as a professional clown for the past 25 years here in Los Angeles, and what kind of seemed like little one-offs really just became kind of the norm as far as people feeling like all clowns are scary and that sort of stuff. And I had been working with a corporation, assisting one of their clowns in the field, Ronald McDonald. And it was around 2016 when that kind of came crashing to a halt, as well as the Barnum and Bailey Circus. They closed their doors, and Big Apple closed their doors. And so they've since reopened, but they've reopened they've rebooted their sort of franchises, as it were. The circus doesn't include clowns anymore, not with a painted face. And I think Big Apple Circus has done something similar, but maybe not as as strict. But I just felt like at that time I'd had a friend that had been telling me for years how great it would be to document kind of my life as a clown. But up until that time, I didn't feel the need. And then when that happened, I thought, well, we probably should document this because this is happening in real time and it's, concerning. And that was kind of the beginning of the documentary. So that started in 2017 and we just kind of wrapped up in 2024. So it was a good 8 years that we did that. I feel like with the sort of our clown ambassador right now is the horror clown, for better or worse. And I just want to add to the conversation that not everything is a horror clown. And not that I'm against them, but I want to say that there's other clowns that should be seated at the table, just to remind people, we're sitting on a rich heritage here in America with a lot of clowns. And I just don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I want people to, see that there's more to clowning than just a horror clown.
Right, right. Well, I myself, I grew up in the 70s, with, and I remember, Clarabelle the Clown,
Yep.
Blinky, Bozo was one of my favorites.
Yep.
And, but then suddenly there was just this shift, this cultural shift with clowns with, I guess, like Pennywise, the Poltergeist clown, Art the Clown, all this stuff. I mean, we even had a real life horror clown with John Wayne Gacy and that whole situation. But what do you think brought this all on? I mean, I can understand you have, okay, well, you got your scary clowns and your good clowns, but now the scary clowns just kind of took over and overshadowed the classic, fun loving, kid clown. Well, what do you think that caused that shift?
Well, I think, a clown is really the sign of the times. And so you have back in the 30s, you have Emmett Kelly, who was an injured trapeze artist at the time. But he's basically made famous the hobo clown, which is the clown that you see with, kind of like a beard and that sort of stuff and ill-fitting clothes and the ill-fitted clothes. So, and then you have the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, you start getting into really the corporate embrace of clowns. You had Lou Jacobs in the circus, but that's when you saw Bozo pop up and Ronald started popping up. Many people don't know this, but Burger King had a clown then. So it was really warmly embraced by a lot of corporations. And after that, in the 80s, we start seeing, and I think it's just American distrust and a lot of these things that have been kind of like basically embraced by corporations and such. And so you see it kind of as a lot of things start to influence movies and TV. And we're in America a very cinematic culture. And so I think part of this is it plays to the masses really well. They're informed with how to think about things. And so you have scary clowns that you're seeing on TV. And because a lot of people in America can't separate from fiction, to them, all clowns become scary. And,
Right.
and I just think, and so really what we've done is we've gotten ourselves into a situation because we don't have a lot of exposure, especially young people, to clowns nowadays. The only exposure they do have is to the horror clowns and kind of that negative clown persona that they don't have anything else to draw from. If you didn't have any sort of if let's say the Catholic Church, if you didn't have any interactions with priests and nuns and all you got was from movies, you would think that everybody was possessed and all nuns were like crazy evil zombies or whatever, because
Right.
you don't have other experiences. And so that's
Mhm.
kind of what we're faced with as far as clowning. There's not other positive experiences for the masses of America in sort of their everyday clown. What they're only getting is what they're getting from cinema and from TV. And so, the average person, the average kid will walk up. I still do kids parties. I got one today. The average kid will walk up to me and like, "Hey, aren't all clowns scary?" And I have to, bridge
Mhm.
out of that and say something like, "No, no, that's just my cousin Pennywise. He's been all Hollywood." You know, 'Cause I still like us all being part of the same family. Some are just, well, that's their thing, and that's not my thing. I don't like scaring people. But
Right.
to the average kid, they just don't know. They don't know because they're not going to the circus. They don't see Ronald in McDonald Land at McDonald's. They just don't see. They don't have Bozo in 15 different markets. These things. I mean, Bozo is coming back. He's actually one of the interviews I have is David Arquette in
Mhm.
American Clown, and he bought the rights to Bozo, and so he's trying to bring him back. He believes in this sort of that clowns have a job to do and to spread the word in a positive way is beneficial for all of us. And then I think, in addition to all of that, I think there's a part of us as Americans, and just as people, maybe it's just something not even limited to America, is that we have a natural distrust to anything that seems too good. And
Mhm.
um and we live in a culture that there's always an icky underbelly of something. And so I think news organizations, entertainment organizations have really instilled this sort of like, just I don't just borderline fear in all of us that these are the things that could metastasize from
Right.
clowns being out and just in roaming the country. I don't know if you remember, but in Southern California, it was 2016, 2017. There was articles, like it took news days of them telling us that scary clowns were coming to Southern California. And I have a lot to say on it. We don't have time, but it was necessarily in this podcast. I could talk hours on it, but it was really kind of this confluence of events that news and entertainment are becoming intermeshed. It's not necessarily, we don't know exactly what the direction or the cause or the reason for it, but that the average consumer of the news slash media is just accepting it as like fact, even though it's kind of a salacious story, kind of clickbaity, and probably shouldn't be on a news station to begin with.
Right.
But because they're owned by entertainment companies, it's hard to say no. But what's driving the cycle? Is it entertainment or is it news? And unfortunately, that's the world that we live in now.
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting because I mean, I think there's several factors that drives or the image of the clown where it is today. I mean, of course, like you mentioned earlier, the decline of the traditional circus like Barnum and Bailey and Circus Vargas. I mean, geez, when I was a kid, I remember every year these circuses were propping up all over town, and now I mean, we got Cirque du Soleil, but that's kind of geared more towards adults and not so cute. You don't have traditional clowns in that. But also, I think you have the aspect of kids, especially. You look at Star Wars, for example. Who do they? Oh, Darth Vader, not Luke Skywalker. They look at the bad boy, the bad guy, the darker. The uniforms are so much cooler on this side, and because they're so bad, and maybe that's kind of the appeal, that rose, I guess, with Pennywise back in the '80s. But it just kind of took over, unfortunately. I mean, there's no real balance. And it wasn't until I started researching your documentary that it was kind of sad, actually, because I remember those feelings when I was a kid, when watching clowns on TV or going to the circus. It was just a special, beautiful innocence and wonder and fun. And that's gone, unfortunately. At least it's I mean, it may still be there, but it's not as prevalent as it was back then.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that you bring up, Joe, because it is. We do gravitate, right? I mean, every kid gravitates. I have sons that are 8 now, and they love the bad guys, and we get in arguments about like Palpatine and Yoda, which one is cooler, And I was like, well, I mean, and we've gone back and forth. But there is and Darth Vader, yes, everyone is, and the Stormtroopers, you want to collect those guys. There's a mystery to it and kind of a menace to it. And I imagine that's the same reason why the horror clowns are popular. There's kind of the horror clown is the great leveler. He doesn't care about you or anything. He just wants to like kill you, and,
right.
And again, and I think there's a place for that. That's great. I don't mind it. I'm not objecting to that. I'm just objecting to that being the only clown we see. I've said this before, but I feel like, in golf, if anyone out there is a golfer, you use lots of different clubs. You're not going to hit, the sand wedge from the tees. You're not going to do that unless it's like, a 20-yard hole. You're going to use a driver or a wood. And I just think that that's the way it is with clowning. You don't have just one clown fits all. You've got rodeo clowns. You've got medical clowns. You have, you have birthday party clowns. You have clowns for the cinema. You have just a lot of different venues that these people perform in and perfect. And the horror clown is very specific. He doesn't care about kids. I mean, other than for food. So for him to have so much market share is just a little bit disappointing. And so, and I realize that there's not other positive role models to really to try to pull away that focus. And so I'm just trying to put my best clown shoe forward and trying to make that happen.
Well, that's great. That's awesome. I mean, but unfortunately, Hollywood is, to use your analogy, a one club town. They'll beat that club to death until there's no longer any breath in it. and without going, let's diversify. There's this and there's that. And let me ask you, so to you, what does it mean to be a clown?
What does it mean to be a clown? I think I was raised like you, Joe. I was raised in the '70s and in the '80s, and I graduated high school in the '90s and all that sort of stuff. So I had a different. I was raised as a child to basically not have a lot of emotions that were inconvenient to our parents. And I'm sure people are still raised like this.
Mhm.
A clown, I think, often allows us to be, especially a good clown, allows children and people to to be right, to be correct, to be the little selves that they are, and to have the emotions and the anger, and that means whether you're at a kid's party where you're misidentifying something, the kid is like, "No, man, no, that's not right." Or you're in a hospital setting where this a child has been there for an unknown quantity of days, and you're just trying to get in the room to say hi, and they don't want to see you, and so you're like, okay, I totally get it. I wouldn't want to see us either. And then you're trying to kind of exit, but you're making a bad job of it, and you get a smile from that little kid, but they're still empowered by being able to say no,
Mhm.
to you specifically, when they don't get that power anybody else. So I think being a clown, you're empowering young people to be their true authentic selves. And I think there's just so many opportunities and so many times when kids don't get that. Even the most loving, doting parents aren't 100%,
Mhm.
available to their kids 100% of the time. They will fall. But a clown can always be there for that duration of the time and give those kids status that they wouldn't normally have. Um, and I think it's a remarkable thing. There's not many other people that can really do that, and not many vocations
Mhm.
that's your energy. That's what you thrive on, is
Right.
making kids powerful. And and so to, I don't know, just to let that be dismissed and to let that fall to the wayside, I just feel like is a real travesty. And I'll go one step further. Not just kids, clowns, jesters, all of these people, they speak truth to power. They skewer, they satire, they make fun of, they um they um they confront sort of these age old sort of truisms that we accept as truth. But the reality is, back in the day of, the 1300s, only the jester could tell the king how wrong he was.
Right.
Nobody else could. And we live in a very politicized environment where certain people in power don't think anything is funny and don't want to be told the truth. And I think
Mhm.
that does us a huge injustice as a society. And if we're trying to silence the messengers and the tricksters, then what does that say about the health of our society? I think it's a very, very slippery slope. And
Yeah.
I think we're talking about muzzling or getting rid of or painting in a negative light just all of these people that have given their lives to making the world a slightly brighter place. And
Right.
I think it's absurd that we would do this. Would we, if in today's day and age, would Mr. Rogers ever exist? Would we be like, no, nah, too weird. Anyone's
Right.
just talking to kids is too weird. So I think we're on the precipice of really, it's kind of like that adage, like we can't have anything good, and I think
Right.
there's a danger sometimes with kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We need to have some good stuff. We need to create. We need to let kids be vulnerable and earnest and sweet, and to let them have a little slice of what we had as children. Before they just, I don't know, throw their hands up and say, "There's nothing I can do about this."
Mhm.
I think if we don't kind of energize the young with kind of a feeling of like of true harmony, then what does that mean when they become more sort of disillusioned as they get older?
Mhm.
We haven't given we haven't given them any place to go.
Right, right. Well, I firmly believe that, I mean, it's definitely up to folks like yourself to keep pushing this forward. Because let me tell you, I do believe the power of the American clown, the clown in general, is still very powerful. And once that barrier, and this is my personal belief in having looked into this and really put thought into it. Yeah, once you guys as clowns get out there and break, tear down that barrier, that cynical negative barrier that's been put up there by our current culture. Once you break through it, I think the clown still has a very positive and strong influence on the soul of a child and the child within us all as adults. Because I kid you not. I mean, I went to a traditional circus a couple of years ago, and there were some clowns, all with the traditional paints and everything. And yeah, I rolled my eyes a little bit, but within minutes, I found myself giggling and cackling like a child. It breached that barrier down, and it's pure magic. And I think, my hat's off to yourself and other professional clowns who, despite the adversity that's out there, or the barriers that are being put up there by the negative imagery of clowns, so you guys keep going and keep doing it. And I think it's so admirable, and it's just it's awe-inspiring. It really is.
Well, I really thank you, Joe. I thank you for saying that. This is what we do. It's something that is in many ways a calling, and no different than any sort of calling and passion that somebody else has. And like an actor would be like, wouldn't let rejection kind of phase them. I feel the same way as a clown. This is what we're kind of driven to do, and this is what we want to do. And it really is about connecting with people and just really sharing with them our sort of our sort of group foibles in life, and hoping that within that we just see a little bit more of our humanity and how we're all connected and how we're all kind of like together.
Absolutely. And I think you guys definitely have that power. And it's definitely, it may have dimmed a little bit, but, it's still there. And I think it's beautiful. You are an inspiration, and I can't wait to watch your documentary on this. I saw clips of it. And yeah, give me that. It resonated deep inside and just made me feel warm and fuzzy all over. It really did.
Thanks, man. We have John C. Riley in it. We have Steve O's in it. David Arquette, David Howard Thornton, who plays Art the Terrifier. I felt like it was very it was beneficial for us to hear also from that side, And Bill Irwin, who is he's a master clown, and he's been doing it for a long time, and just the nicest, most wonderful guy. And then we have dozens of rank and file clowns who you've seen in and out of shows and in and out of events, and I just wanted to get their perspective. And as far as I know, there has not been a group of people like this put together to create a documentary like this, and like ever really. I haven't found it, and so I really wanted. I'm not saying that this is the sort of like, this is a documentary above all other documentaries, but I did feel like I had the position and the insight to put my clown foot forward as best I could, in the hopes that, I could educate some other people and take away the grease paint and let them see the person behind it a little bit and what they sacrificed to get there.
Yeah. Well, especially in current world events and climate, what, this is something we definitely need. It's little beacon of light and joy. And it's just, again, like I said, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's very inspiring, and just feels good that, there's folks like yourself out there that, despite the garbage that's going on, that the real clowns, not the clowns that are causing all this disruption in our society, but the real clowns are still out there, bringing joy to the world.
Yeah, and I want to take the word back. I see that word clown used a lot, and I see, it thrown on these sort of people in power, and I'll let them accept that word, and I won't fight that word if I see them juggle or do something funny or do a hat trick or make a kid laugh. Let's start making kids laugh. If we're going to call them clowns, let's start making kids laugh and not putting them in cages. The clowns don't do that. The horror clown does. So I'm tired of the politicians playing the role of a horror clown, we're better than that. And then the real clowns are here to object to that.
There you go. Well, and finally, before we leave, what is your objective? What is your goal? What is it that you want your audience to come away with after watching your film?
I would love both young and old to reflect on their own childhood and to see how a clown has, probably impacted them some way. And for the younger generation or even the older generation, I would love for them to be like, damn, I would like to be a clown. That'd be awesome. Like I want to be a clown now, because I think this is set to hopefully inspire. It's a call to action, that our work here is not done. We have to continue, and that's what I want. I want people to think positively on a clown and not to think all doom and gloom, but just to feel like we got a little work to do. We got to upset the balance.
Love it. I really do. Well, Guilford, thank you so much for coming on the show, and the best of luck to, on your documentary. It looks amazing. Please tell our listeners where your film will be premiering and where they can see it.
Yeah, it'll be premiering this Monday, the 23rd, in Hollywood at 7 p.m. at the Dances with Films Film Festival. So it's right there, right by Grauman's Chinese Theater. It's kind of in that little sixplex that's right next to it when you go up the stairs, and that new gigantic structure they built. So it's right there, man, right in Hollywood. And you're going to see a bunch of the cast, and it's going to be really good.
Fantastic. Well, I'm very excited for you, and I'm very excited to see your film when it comes out.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate that.
And thank you so much. It's been an honor and an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
You bet, Joe.
So we really hope you enjoyed the episode. Please help to support the podcast by giving us a 5-star rating or leave us a great review. Another way you can support us is simply to subscribe and or follow us on Amazon, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Deezer, Audible, Boomplay, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast fix. You can also catch me on my monthly horror podcast, Fear on Film, with Sean O'Connor, where we cover all the latest in horror films, available on all the same platforms. Also, don't forget to check us out on Instagram, YouTube, Threads, TikTok, and Blue Sky. All of this stuff, they can be found in our LinkTree link below in the show notes. You can also contact us directly by email to thefilmjoepod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. So, with that being said, I'm Joe, and this is the Film Joe Podcast, where film talk happens.